Dakota as well, but you're going to see primarily a lot of number 2 green peas and a lot of yellow peas in the northwest corner of North Dakota. You also see some red lentil and some green lentil production up in those areas as well, but it's primarily a richly lentil in that area. Another area that's been looking for something else to grow is down in the Nebraska area, where now you're seeing about 20,000 tons of yellow peas being grown. Certainly in the last year, one of the big topics, if we were at Cecil's last year, we were talking about, the green pea market and what's going to happen. So I thought I would run you down a little bit of a look of the green-yellow pea seeding that happened in the 2013 year. It was a big discussion, and certainly you can see by looking at the United States acreage, we increased the green pea acreage, but we even increased the yellow pea acreage by even more than we did on the green pea. As I said, down looking at Washington, Idaho, it's primarily all green pea down there. We increased the acreage in 2013 out there. Montana, you saw a large increase in green pea acreage as well, but a bigger increase yet in yellow peas, and North Dakota as well. And if you kind of look at the map over the last 4 years, you can see where in 2011 we kind of bottomed out in our acreage. A lot of that was due to the prevent plant weather situation in North Dakota, but we've slowly continued to increase it since then. And I know for a fact in Montana, we're going to see big increases again this year as farmers really like planting these peas into their rotation. So looking at the what we call the P&W region, a quick look at their production season weather. The P&W had really an ideal planting season. They were able to start planting early. They did get a frost after a lot of it was in the ground, which kind of stunted some of the production out there. They did have some hot weather during the bloom as well. Still had good yields out there, but probably could have been better. Their harvest was a little bit mixed with some good early harvest, but a lot of the later production turned out to have a lot of bleach in that region on the peas. The yields out there were just an average yield. Montana production, we had really, really good production this year. Western Montana crop went in about 2 to 3 weeks earlier than it normally would because of the dry winter we had last year and warm spring temperatures, which allowed us to get it in the ground. The Northeast Montana ended up with a late seeding and a late harvesting, but we had an ideal summer throughout that, so we had very good yields. One of the issues we had in Montana that will probably continue to be an issue in the green pea expansion is that we had a lot of poor weather close to harvest last year, where I would estimate close to 10% of the acreage of green peas were lost due to hailstorms, windstorms, rainstorms in that area. And the reason I say it's going to affect it for next year is because in a lot of the areas where we were growing seed production for the next crop of some of our high quality products like the Aragorn and the Banner, Cruiser, those varieties, they were actually lost due to the hailstorms this year. So our seed stocks for some of the higher quality products we have this year are going to be lower. But the one nice thing about what did happen in Montana is we did have record yields on both peas and lentils this year. North Dakota, which is the second largest producing area, was wet early. It did seed late. It had a cool, wet summer, which was ideal for production out there. Its harvest was a little later than we had anticipated. The yields were very good, if not record in most cases, particularly on peas. The quality is just an average this year with a lot of bleaching in it, somewhere in that 2 to 5% area for the green peas. The yellow peas were excellent quality. The lentils have a little bit of staining to them, but in general aren't too bad. So a quick rundown on production. Overall yields were higher in the United States for pulse crops. The lentils yields were high, but the appearance is just average. The chickpea sizing was a little bit smaller than the previous years, but the quality is very good. The yellow pea yields were higher, the quality is good, and one of the things that has helped the U.S. to be able to do this year is to get back into the commercially export markets. One of the things that happens with U.S. yellow peas is our government has large donation programs of split yellow peas, which typically makes U.S. yellow pea prices much higher than anywhere else in the world, as it's supported strong by our government. So it's difficult to take our production and market it commercially. And if you looked at the past year's commercial exports, they've continued to go lower as our production was lower, and it drove our yellow pea prices up. The U.S. #1 green pea production was higher last year, which has allowed us to supply more into the world and gain market share into places like Russia and the European Union, China. But the increase in it wasn't as high as what people think. If you, I think, asked most exporters in the U.S. right now, they would tell you they're completely sold out on U.S. #1 green pea, and #2 stocks are very, very tight at this point in time. Looking at our FAQ certifications, fair average quality in the Pacific Northwest region, as I said, they had some bleaching at harvest time. Green peas had a quality impairment for bleach, which graded an average U.S. #3. Yellow peas, which yellow pea production out there is very low, were U.S. #1. Medium lentils, U.S. #1. The small lentils, which are primarily a Pardino lentil out in that region, were U.S. #1. Chickpeas were U.S. #1 with 73% of the crop above a 22/64 sieve, so an average seed count of about 54 seeds per ounce. In the Midwest, the Montana, North Dakota region, South Dakota area, whole green pea had a quality impairment for bleach, and fair average quality was U.S. #2. Whole yellow peas were U.S. #1. Our lentils were U.S. #1 as well. And chickpeas we don't grow enough to get good data on in those regions. Looking at a pea by class production estimation, yellow peas in this past year, my estimation is somewhere around 500,000 metric tons of production. Green peas closer to about 300,000 tons of production for a total production around 800,000 tons. And these are based upon my estimations, which I tend to think are higher than what Mr. Clancy is showing. One of the things with the U.S. government, as we went into the sequester mode in the last year, peas and lentils were dropped off what the government was going to track and put out accurate numbers for, so it's been a little difficult to really get good numbers in the pea and lentil area in the United States. Looking at our supply-demand estimates, you can see that our production is rolling higher in the last year. We started out with very low stocks, but you're going to see that with production that we had this year and some of the slow transportation we're receiving, we're going to end up with a carry-out stocks this year of about 140,000 tons, and our stocks-to-use ratio somewhere near 23.8%. So a big jump. It's the largest we've had since the 2010 year. And for a trader, to me, it's good to see it because we finally have some liquidity and the ability to do some exporting and choose through product. So again, the trends in USP production, acreage increasing, and you can see our production is increasing as well. One of the things that you've seen happen over the last 2 to 3 years that I think is very significant is the U.S. domestic pea disappearance. And there's been a lot of time and energy put in by places like the U.S. Dry Pea and Lentil Association, several companies out there also that are working on their own to promote and find different uses for peas into pea flours, proteins, starches, and into the ingredient business. And we're starting to get some traction in that area, as well as we're seeing big traction out of the pet food industry. A lot of the pet foods in the United States have gone to where they're advertising, vegetables as opposed to grains into their pet foods. Gluten-free pet food is big on the shelves, and people are willing to pay the prices for that. So the pet food manufacturers have been willing to pay strong prices for both peas, lentils, and chickpeas. It's enabled us to basically get rid of a lot of our off-quality product at premium prices. I do believe we'll see this trend continue as well, although one of the reasons that's helped this trend has been high soybean prices, high corn prices, so they've kind of gone towards peas. But most manufacturers are telling us they like what they're getting and they'll likely stick with what they're doing. Looking at where the U.S. exports green peas, you can see India is the largest customer over the last year. This data is up through December, 47,000 metric tons. But those exports to India this year are down 28%. And you can see that China, earlier there was a question about China and the emergence of it. You can see our exports to China are up 60% this year at 33,000 metric tons. And a large share of this has been high-quality U.S. #1 branded product into that market. Other buyers are Canada, Philippines, Saudi Arabia, Mexico, Colombia, Peru, Taiwan, Kenya. You see Russia with a big increase of up 600%. I think a lot of that has come because of the tight supply the prior year, which enabled the U.S. to move in on some of the Canadian market share into those markets. So, yellow pea export destinations, again, you see India down 28%. You see China up 600% as we had good commercial export stocks this year and enabled us to move into those markets. Pakistan up 200%. We're seeing markets into Belgium and Indonesia, and then just our typical Taiwan and Korean business as well. Moving on to lentils, you see a big trend in lentil production. Back in 2010, when markets were near the $1,000 a ton area, everybody in Montana, North Dakota wanted to grow as many lentils as they could. All of a sudden, you saw guys that weren't growing any were growing 2,000 to 3,000 acres in the 1 year's change. And that year, we came in and produced 410,000 tons. And since then, the prices have gone down. Growers basically thought that was a given for them at those price levels, but obviously it's not. So lentils have not been as popular of a product to grow in the United States, and acreage is showing that as the prices have gone lower, producers have gone away from it. And we expect this trend to continue into this next year as well. But you can see we produced last year about 227,000 tons. Exports as well are declining, just mainly due to the production and lack of the ability to have stocks to supply markets. So our ending stocks also have kind of continued to creep up over the last year. This is, again, somewhere where I have a little bit of a disagreement with some of the numbers people. Just being out there in the country, having the facilities, I feel there's stronger stocks of lentils in the United States than what most people are giving credit for, as producers still think that they're going to be $800 to $900 a ton for these products, and they want to sit back and wait. And frankly, producers in the United States have had the money to be able to sit on product, and they have the storage at home. It's enabled them to sit